What's up, ghouls? It's Betty Jade, and I'm finally starting another craft project. I took a break for a little bit, mostly because I was debating whether or not to do this one. And, it's a lot. It's gonna be a lot. So if you see the big thing behind me, it's a big old trunk. It's a big old, very beat up, crappy dappy trunk. I've had this for a little bit. I got it even more beat up, and I already did a little bit of work to it, because I did a little bit of work to it when I first got it. But it needs much more work. I was debating just getting rid of it, but I have a hard time just letting things go, so instead I was thinking about what to do with it, and I was like, well, I gotta make it over. And I was like, you know what? What if I made an actual mimic chest? And then I was like, oh no. I have to do it now. I have to do it. I must find some way. So, whether or not it turns out, I will at least have tried. So, yeah, I'm going to try to make like an actual giant mimic chest. When it's done, I might not actually even keep this one. I might try to sell it, because I'm probably going to be moving, and I'm going to need to downsize a lot, because I'm going to be moving into a much smaller place. So, yeah, hopefully it turns out really well so I can sell it to someone who would love it and appreciate how weird it's going to be. It's really beat up and it's messed up, and like all the hardware on it and stuff is messed up, and I'm not a carpenter, I'm not a blacksmith, I can't do those things. I don't know how to do those things, so it's going to be a process. It might be a broken mimic chest, but it will at least look cool. I know I can make things look cool, but if I can fix stuff, that's another thing. And also, when I was peeling some of the stuff out of it, there's more stuff to peel inside, but there's like there was old newspaper, and there's still more old, like, I don't know, wallpaper or something inside of it. It stinks. It horribly stinks like mothballs, and it's awful. So I gotta try to get the smell out. But when there was like newspapers like pressed all on it, they were from like 100 years ago. So this trunk is at least like 100 years old, I reckon. Unless for some reason someone's Nana saved newspapers for years and years and years and then plastered them to it. But I mean, who's gonna save newspapers for 50 years and then plaster them to a new trunk? I don't think that's gonna happen. So I think this trunk is like super friggin' old. Like 100-year-old trunk. So, and I'm gonna wreck it a little bit, but save it maybe in a way. From a dump, probably. I don't know. So, let's get started. Okay, so first I decided to scrape off all this nasty old wallpaper on the inside,
and it smells like mothballs, which makes it like way worse. And I tried just taking a scraper and just scraping it out, and it was kind of working, but not great. And then I found out that it's way easier if you just take like a spray bottle and get it damp. And if you get the wallpaper damp, then it just scrapes like right off. So I did that for the rest of it. So after I took all the nasty stuff off the wood, it was super rough underneath. So I did my best to just kind of sand it down a little bit. I did this with the inside and the outside. I did my best to sand around like all the metal bits on the outside of it, like all the hardware. I didn't do the best job on like the outside on the top, but I think I did a pretty good job on the inside here. There wasn't any like nasty splintery stuff like there was when I started. I don't know if I mentioned already, but this trunk is like super old, and you can tell like the wood is super nasty and falling apart. So I had to sand it down and then start gluing it back together. This is one of the bits I glued back together with just some Gorilla wood glue. It was one of the beams that was split apart. I just put some wood glue in the seam, and then I got a really oversized clamp because I got it to clamp another part of the trunk together that I needed that size for, but it was the only clamp I got, so that's why it's so big and honking huge. But yeah, I just put the glue in and then I clamped it shut. So after I glued a bunch of the splintered and cracked pieces of the trunk back together, it was a little ripply and bubbly, so I just took my sander out again and I just sanded down some of the glued pieces so they'd be a little bit smoother. Now it was time to take the rest of the nasty stuff off the outside of the trunk, which was this really gross, like, decaying mesh, and also some hardware on the side that had once held the straps on the side of the trunk. There were no straps anymore. I think they were once leather, but they had decayed off. There was just like some chunks left in the hardware, so I had to pry those up and take those off as well. After I did that, I just did like a final clean where I got my spray bottle out again and I just sprayed it down and then scraped it down really good to get all that nasty junk off. And then I wiped it down really good because it was just really filthy dirty. So I wiped it down really good after getting it wet with like a rag and just gave it a good clean and just like actually cleaned it and then let it dry and sanded it. I feel like I'm playing doctor because I'm gluing yet another crack in this chest. I feel like someone who actually knows how to do woodworking and restoring is like screaming at me right now, telling me all the things I'm doing wrong, and I'm just like fixing it with glue. It's like, slap it, put some more duct tape on that thing. Yeah, it'll work. It'll fix it. But yeah, I just glue it, and for some reason it kind of worked. Next, I had to take off all this weird hardware somebody put on the front of this. Like they were trying to lock it down. The front of this like warped and bent out, so it still closes, but it doesn't close easy. So I guess that's why somebody put all this janky looking crud on the front of it, so I'm just unscrewing it all and taking it off. Moving on to painting, I got a Kills brand odor blocking paint for the inside as a primer coat because it still smells like mothballs. So this should take out the rest of the lingering mothball odor is what I thought, and it worked. Thankfully. Smells like paint now, but it doesn't smell like mothballs. So after I washed it down with like water and a little bit of lemon oil, I coated it with 2 cans of this Kills odor blocking paint, and it no longer smells like mothballs, thankfully. Okay, now I just had this random can of glossy black paint that my mom gave me, so I just decided to use that for repainting just the kind of bars of the trunk. I don't know what to call them, but they're just kind of the distinct crossbars of the trunk. They looked like they had once been dark, and I liked them that way, so I just wanted to make them kind of pop. So I wanted them to be black, so I just repainted them with this black paint. I thought of making the whole trunk black, but I decided I liked it kind of looking decrepit in the way that it was, so I wanted it to kind of still look faded wood, the rest of it. So I just left the trunk the way it was, besides repainting these black. Okay, now we're done with the restoration and we can make this thing a monster. Now it's time to break into this foam clay I bought off of Amazon. Still hate foam clay. Still just think it's trash poopy. But we're gonna use it to make some big ol' monster teeth. And at first I was just gonna break into it, but then I remembered you can use tinfoil, Reynolds wrap, to make a base, so you don't have to waste a bunch of expensive clay. So I broke that out, formed a bunch of teeth, and basically just kind of wrapped the clay around it, and then just kind of stood them up and let them dry. Next was painting this teeth, kind of a decayed tooth color, which was white, yellow, and kind of a tannish brown, which made this kind of rotteny base color. And I just painted all the teeth this color, brushed it up, and let it dry. Then I painted the base of the teeth a darker brown, and I started off by trying to mix like yellow, tan, and like this, I think it was called like dark ochre or something like that. And I brushed that around the base, but I thought that that was kind of too light. So after I did that, then I just kind of brushed the dark ochre kind of over it towards the base a bit more, and I liked that look a little bit better. But yeah, just kind of brush a darker, dingier brown, kind of roughly, dryly, like kind of dry brush it more around the base, and it makes the teeth look kind of decayed and rotten and kind of gnarly. And also I forgot, I left the very tips of the teeth a little bit white, and it just makes them look a little bit more dimensional. Then it was time to glue the teeth inside, and this was a process, let me tell you. So I tried using my E6000 glue, and basically I just kind of took the teeth and looked at where I wanted them placed in the box, because I had all different sizes that I made, and I just kind of arranged and looked where I'd want them, starting with the biggest teeth and working down to the smallest. And then because E6000 has such a long drying time, I had to tape them with just my crappy cheap tape from the dollar store. So I just taped them in place so they would stay with the E6000 glue. And then after I was done with that, after I took the tape all off, like the next day, then I took hot glue and just hot glued like all around the seams and the sides and everything, and just like really glued them down like even more and secured them, and I felt like that did a little bit of a better job. Okay, now that the teeth are glued in, we can make some mouth texture in the box, and I'm just gonna take this great stuff foam, the same thing that I did with my man-eating plant. If you've ever seen that video on my channel, I used this stuff inside the plant heads. The same concept. I'm just going around the teeth majorly to make kind of a gum rim, kind of like we all have around our teeth, this kind of big circular rim of gums. So I'm making that texture with a foam, and then just with the rest of the can that I have left after doing that, I'm just making kind of a funny texture with a foam, kind of like you have on the roof of your mouth, because I'm just using one can because I'm being cheap, because I've already put in a lot into this project and I don't feel like getting another can just to make a whole lot of texture, because I think one looks good enough. Okay, now it's time to paint the inside of the box, and I've got this glossy icy grape and some satin black, both I got from Walmart. And I've also already sectioned off and protected the edges of the box and also all of the teeth. I just did that with some painter's tape and some plastic wrap, so none of the teeth are going to get painted by this spray paint. And I start off with the purple color, which is going to be the major color for the top where all the gums are. I imagine mimic gums are mostly kind of a ghoulish purple color, not really a pinky color. I imagine they're purpley and ghouly. So that's what I used for the majority of the color, and then I just painted kind of the outside more of a black, kind of a blackened, nasty black, and I think it turned out pretty cool. I did the inside of the box looking more like its gullet, with black going into kind of a purple hole in the middle, kind of like maybe you were sliding down into its infinite stomach. Making that was a little bit harder. The paint didn't necessarily want to stick. I don't know if it was the weird primer I put on or just that the paint wasn't that great. I'm not sure. But it did take like 4 coats of paint for it to actually kind of stick and the color to look solid in the inside of the box. Not the top. The top only took like, it looked fine after 1 coat, but 2 coats really made it look good, so the top was fine. So I used this Krylon triple thick clear glaze to kind of coat the inside with a protective finish. I would have liked to use an actual like interior like wood finish, like I did for the snail project that I made, but I just didn't have the time to actually coat it and wait for it to dry. Now that I've moved, I might do that later, but for now, this is all I put in. I just coated it and let it dry while I was working. So now it's the trickiest part. The eyeball. This gave me the most grief. I tried using this clay I'd never used before. Nara air dry clay. I didn't like it. Maybe if I hadn't kind of tried to fit it in a mold, it would have been okay, but it was so sticky. It was like literal dough. Like, it smelled like yeast, and it stuck into my mold that I was trying to make sure it could fit into. And it just, I ended up throwing it away. I felt really bad. And like, it wasn't expensive. It was like under $5 for the whole package, but I got really mad. But so basically I'm using this new technique because I lost the glass piece for trying to make it the normal way. So I'm making it with resin, and I'm building up a base of tinfoil to start, and then I'm going to make the base of the eyeball out of clay. And I tried with this clay, but it didn't work, so I had to restart with some baked clay. Okay, so now I have some polymer clay, and I just rolled it out, and I'm spreading it over my foil mold, and I've just got a divot in it to where I'm putting the iris, and I'm making the shape of the pupil. I like it to where the pupil is kind of coming up a little bit and making an actual like 3D shape. I think that's really cool. And then I'm using various tools to make the lines in the iris. I'm using an X-Acto knife to make some deeper cuts. I'm using a pin to make some shallower cuts. And I'm just making tons and tons and tons and tons of lines. And then to make some of the lines a bit fatter, I'm taking the end of just a hairpin that I found, and every like few lines I'm just making a few spare of them deeper. And then I'm taking just a little snake of the clay, and I'm making just a weird little eye kind of doodad around the rim of it. And I'm thinking it makes it just look kind of cool, so I'm keeping the one around the rim to just add some depth to it and just some uniqueness. Wouldn't you know it, once I finished, I realized I'd made it too dang small and too fat. I'd shaped it wrong once I was ready to put it in the oven, so I remade a foil base for it. Not so much a big dome, and more as just a flat disc to put in more of the base of the mold I'm going to put it in for the resin. And to try to save as much of what I've done as I can, I'm just going to try to tear out some of the foil from the inside and just kind of cut up around the polymer clay and just relay it against the new mold that I've made, and then rework what I have to rework and remake it basically because I actually do have to remake it because it's a whole new size, so I had to remake the whole thing because I was not smart. So here's what it looks like all done again. And I smoothed out the edges of it. And now I'm on to painting it. I'm just using acrylic paint. And I'm going to paint it red. Cause I like red eyes. Red eyes with yellow in the center is just on theme for me. I don't know, like, the eyes of Sauron. Maybe I've been more influenced by Lord of the Rings than I realize. It's a sleeper agent thing deep inside of me that I just don't realize is in there. But I start with, like, the blackest shade of red around the rim, and then move in from deep red into a lighter red into bright yellow around the pupil, and then painting the pupil black. And then I couldn't really decide on what color I wanted the funky little squiggly around the edge, and then I decided purple. Yeah, purple matches the box, so I painted it purple, and then you can't really see them on camera, I don't think, but I painted like some purple flecks also in the eyeball, kind of like hazel eyes. How sometimes they'll have like flecks of brown. This cutie patootie has some flecks of purple, so he's looking real majestic. Now it's resin time, but we've gotta measure how much resin we need. So I'm using brown rice, because I need to know how much resin is going to fit in my eyeball. So I'm using brown rice to take the place of where all the resin will be with my eyeball. So I'm pouring in the rice, and I'm placing my eyeball, and I'm also pouring rice in around the edge too, because resin will also go there. And then once I have all the rice in there, then I'm taking the rice out and I'm measuring how much that rice is. That way I know that is the amount of resin that I will need to fill the mold. However, I learned that resin shrinks a little bit, so I should have used a little more than that amount that I measured, if that makes sense. But this is the basic amount that I would need, plus probably a little bit more. Quick disclaimer, this is my first time ever using resin, and me a little freaked out. It just seemed daunting, but it actually wasn't all that hard. It just seemed kind of sticky. I hate sticky. But it wasn't that hard. I did use a mask to ventilate, keep the chemicals away from me. Not all masks do filter out the chemicals, so keep that in mind and do your research. Also worked in a ventilated area as much as I could. So yeah, protect yourself when you're working with resin, even if it's non-odorous. Anyway, I used epoxy resin, so you have to make sure it's even in a 1-to-1 ratio. So I got them a little uneven, so I had to take a little bit out of the hardener. So I missed that a little bit. And then I put them together in the big bowl and mixed them very carefully, very slowly, so not to get bubbles. Didn't want any bubbles in there. Didn't want a bubbly eyeball. So mixed them slowly and carefully, making sure to scrape the sides and the bottom. Didn't want goopy resin, uncured, unhardened resin left over in the bowl. But also when I poured the resin into the mold, the cake mold that I also bought off of Amazon, I made sure not to scrape the sides like you would do when baking a cake, because if you do that, you could potentially pour some unmixed resin into your mold, and it could not cure, and you could get unhardened, goopy, not good resin in your mold, which you don't want. So I did not scrape the sides when I poured it in, because I didn't want to chance that. And I should have done 2 pours. I should have poured first into the eyeball, and then let that cure, and then I should have poured into here. I'm not supposed to do pours this deep. I think you're only supposed to do like a 1/4 of an inch or something, and this was a deep pour, so I just blasted it with the heat gun to try to dissolve any bubbles, and then prayed to the resin gods to have mercy on my soul. So later that night, I came back to take it out of the mold. It only took a few hours to cure, probably because, well, it's quick set resin, but also because I made it so deep, and when resin gets deep, it gets hot and it cures very fast. At least I think that's how it goes. And you'll see here in a second that it looks super cool, but also because I didn't do it in 2 parts, like I said, it got a big old air pocket in it. And you can see that air bubble it got, which kind of sucks. Would have been way better if I'd have had time and I'd have thought ahead and I'd have done it in 2 parts, but I mean, it still looks wicked cool. Still looks wicked cool. So, I'm not that mad at it. It still looks sick. So, I got this epoxy adhesive, which is basically just another kind of resin that you use as a glue. And I used that to glue the eyeball onto the trunk, which was pretty solid. And it worked really fast. It like glued it on in 90 seconds. So it was super messy though. So I might try it on different projects that like really need to be glued fast, and it might be easier. But I'm not sold on the epoxy just yet. I still like this 6000, but I might try it in the future, we'll see. And then to make the lid for the eyeball, I just took more of my foam clay that I got. It's the same brand, but I got another box in just black. So it's the same as the white, but it's just in a black color. So, I actually like the black way better. For some reason, it's like slicker. It's like a little bit silkier. I don't know why. It's just like moister. Sorry for saying that word, but it just like blended better, and I don't know why. I just like black is always better. I don't know why, but it's just better, you know? And I just made the eyelids, just kind of blended them around, and then just kind of swirled the ends to make it just look a little bit like mystical and cool, and I think it ended up turning out pretty good. Unfortunately, as air dry foam clay tends to do, as I left it to dry during the hours, it did kind of like sag and deflate in itself, so I had to like come back and kind of squish it back into shape, which I always have to do with foam clay, and I hate it and it sucks. So I still hate using this. When it dried, I also painted it with some more black just to give it some more depth because it was kind of flat when the foam dried, so the paint made it pop a little bit more. So then I forgot about some restoration, and I forgot to put some new straps on here. And I just took an old belt that my mom gave me, and I cut some straps out of it. And I'm just taking some really small, short nails that I've got, and I'm hammering them down about where they should be on the side of the chest, so they'll fit back into the hardware. And then I'm going to screw the hardware back down, so I need to drill some new holes into the hardware, so I'm just doing that with my power drill. And then my big fat head got in the way when I filmed screwing the holes into the chest and then screwing the screws back in, so you can't see me doing that, but you can see what it looks like once I put the hardware back into the chest. And so it looks pretty good, and the straps held up once they were back in and can be lifted, so I think it's a pretty good job I did there. Well, I finished it! It took me, as per usual, much longer than I thought or was hoping it would take me. I'm gonna blame it on my move this time, because if it's not obvious by my background, I'm moving in less than a week, so I had other things taking my attention, and I had some things that I had to order for it that I had to wait on like several times, so it slowed me down. But, you know, I think it turned out pretty good. I was going to make the eyeball differently, but I'm pleasantly surprised by the resin. I actually really like how the eyeball turned out with the resin. I think doing it with the clay instead of just putting like glass on top of something I've drawn was better looking. So I might start doing eyeballs like that instead. I do have like a lot of cabochons left over, so I might do them both ways, but I do think that even though it was like much more tedious and it took a lot of time, I think the eyeball looked much better with the resin. I'll do it the proper way though, so it won't form the bubble again. I'll do like the 2 resin layers next time, so it will look perfect. But especially with like how deep the resin was, and you're not supposed to do the resin that deep, I think the eyeball turned out like really super well. So I'm really happy with how it looked, and I think the teeth look really great when you open it. And the gums again with the expanding spray turned out really well, and it looked really nice. So restoring a 100-year-old trunk into a mummy chest, big success. Big time, super cool. So if you also thought it was super cool and great and awesome and fun, remember to like and subscribe, because it makes us happy, you know. It makes us happy, and we need it real bad. So and I want to keep on making cool stuff and posting it on here, and so like and subscribe. Okay. I've got nothing more to say because I'm moving and I'm exhausted and I just want to go sleep. But I have to go to work now, so I'm gonna go cry in my car. Okay. Happy spooky season and happy Halloween, ghouls, and see you in the next video. Bye!